Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to us from. Thank you so much for joining this session this afternoon. I hope that you had a wonderful lunch break. My name is Dr. Mercy Mumba. I am an associate professor and founding director of the Center for Substance Use Research and Related Conditions at the University of Alabama. I want to thank my dear friend Amina and her entire organizing committee for putting together such a wonderful conference. I am sorry I'm not able to be there in person, but I'm sure that you have enjoyed every single session to this point. And there are a few more sessions after this that I'm sure you're going to just enjoy just as much. Like I said, my name is Mercy. I have been tasked to speak with you today about rising and making an impact in organizational research and leadership. A little bit about me. So I was born and raised in Zambia. I lived in Zambia until I was 18 years old. I moved to the United States when I was 18 to pursue an education. I am married to my husband of almost 8 years now. It's going to be 8 years in May. And we live in Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I actually thought when I was growing up that I wanted to be a medical doctor. I've always thought I wanted to be a gynecologist. And then when I moved to the United States, I quickly discovered that medical school was very expensive. And I was actually not going to be able to afford going to medical school. So I started researching other career opportunities. And that's how I learned about nursing. I often tell people that if I ever write a memoir, the title of my memoir will be Detours, because I feel like my life has been full of detours. And I guess that's the lesson in everything that we do, is that we have to be flexible and adaptable and really learn to go with the different blows that life throws at us and really learn to make lemonade, out of lemons, I guess. Life is full of detours, and I've learned that in order to rise in leadership and organizational structures, you have to learn to be flexible and you have to learn to take the detours that come in your career. So I pursued a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Texas at Arlington. While I was in my bachelor's program, I was also considered an honors student. And with that, we were required to do research. And that meant that I had to complete a thesis. With that process, I learned to work with several different faculty members who had funded programs of research, and I truly enjoyed that experience. But one of the things that kept coming up as I was speaking with my professors was just how research came naturally to me. I thought I was just enjoying the process, but I guess the people that were in my life were seeing talents and skills that I was just taking for granted. And so my mentors encouraged me to pursue what we call a BSN to PhD, which is going straight from a bachelor's degree into a PhD program. And that's how I found myself in the PhD program, and the university was going to pay for it. So why not, right? Absolutely. When education is being paid for, you take every opportunity to complete whatever you're going to do. So that's how I find myself in a PhD program. And I really worked as a graduate research assistant because I wanted to hone my research skills and understand the research process inside and out. And so when I completed my PhD program, I pursued a tenure track position, which is a research intensive position. And the reason I did that, like I said, was my passion for inquiry and research and really trying to find solutions to my problem, which was substance use disorders here in the United States. So I pursued that tenure track position. And one of the things that happened during that process was just how quickly I was able to acclimate to tenure track. I had heard so many horror stories about being in academia and being on tenure track and how stressful, yes, it is stressful, how stressful it is, but also how people struggle to meet the benchmarks for tenure. Thankfully, I found myself being very productive in the first 2.5 years of being on tenure track. And so in my fourth year of tenure, which is technically my third year of tenure, I decided to go up early for promotion to associate professor with tenure. And the university was able to back that decision because of how much significant progress I had made in the 2.5 years that I was on tenure track. So I've been an associate professor now for 2 years, going to 2 years. And so in my quest to consistently improve my science and really grow a culture of research, I spoke to my dean about trying to start a center of research. This was something that has not been done in my college before. And so here in 2022, I'm very happy to report that we were able to have the first ever Center for Research approved by the University System Board of Trustees. And I will be serving as the founding director for that center. Like I mentioned, my research has focused on substance use disorders. And a lot of it has really stemmed from my initial research where I was looking at nurses with substance use disorders that then went into other professions, medical doctors, pharmacists, and substance use in the professional world. And so when I moved to Alabama, then I started learning more about substance use within the community and looking at health disparities and social determinants of health and how those influence recovery and community reintegration as productive citizens. So this has been my program of research for the last 10 years. And I've been blessed to have significant funding to support my programs of research, upwards of $10 million as a principal investigator and almost $18 million in collaboration with other friends and colleagues. So as I was saying, one of the things I've been tasked to do today is to really talk about how do you rise in professional organizational leadership and how does your work begin to make an impact. And so the first thing that I like to tell people is that to start having a career that is going to be impactful, the first thing you have to do is to identify your niche. We talk about this a lot in product branding. However, a lot of people don't think about their personal career trajectory as a product. So I like to challenge people to re-envision their career and their options as products that need to be marketed and products that need to be advertised. And how do you get people interested in your work? So when you're thinking about identifying your niche, the first thing you have to identify is what are you passionate about? A lot of people try to do things that they feel are important, but they're not passionate about. I tell people that that is the first recipe to quick burnout in whatever professional role that you're in. And for example, for me, I enjoy conducting substance use research, and I think that that fosters my inquiry and that fosters my curiosity because it is a topic that I'm personally passionate about. It is very difficult to make an impact in an area when you're not passionate about the things that you're working on. So the first thing you have to do to identify your niche is understand your passion. The next thing related to identifying your niche is understanding your strengths, the skills, and the knowledge that you bring to the table. In order for you to successfully establish a niche, you have to have the right tools in your toolkit to be influential, to be impactful, and to have sustaining relevance in your chosen field. So the first thing is passion. The next thing is understanding the strengths and the abilities and the knowledge you bring to the table. The next thing is the differentiating factor. You may be in a niche area, however, there could be other people within your profession or other professions who are doing similar work as you're doing. So you want to make sure that you can differentiate within the niche area what makes you special, what makes you different, and what makes your work relevant compared to other people. So this requires a lot of introspection. It also requires a lot of work going into the literature and seeing what's been done, what's not been done, what are the limitations of what's out there, and what are some gaps that you identify that your specific skill set, knowledge, and expertise can fill. So after you identify your niche, the next thing that you can do is develop a personal brand. This is one of the most important things you can do as a professional. A lot of us try to go through life just, waking up and doing what we need to do, clocking in and clocking out. However, in order for you to rise in organizational leadership and to have the impact that you hope your work is going to have, not just locally, but nationally and internationally, you have to develop a personal brand. So one of the things that I love to do is read. I read broadly about several different topics, and I came across Leanne Cotwood's personal branding framework. And according to Leanne, she has 5 different things that you can do to develop a personal brand. The first thing is to define your goals. As a career woman or man, you have to be able to have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve with every professional endeavor. If you're not sure what your goals are, you will not know if you're being successful or if you're not being successful. So having clearly defined goals is very important in establishing a personal brand. The next thing you want to do is design your brand based on your special attributes that only you can bring to the table. So this is where I ask people to do what is called a SWOT analysis. So SWOT, I'm sure all of you have heard about this, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I tell people that introspection is a gift. And if you want to grow professionally, you have to have time to reflect on your strengths. Be very emphatic about what your weaknesses are. Look at the opportunities that are available to you and identify the threats that are adherent to where you are that may make you less likely to be successful in whatever you're pursuing. So a lot of us are really good, or I want to think a lot of us are really good about identifying our strengths. However, we don't do such a good job at identifying our weaknesses. The reason why it's important to identify your weaknesses is once you identify your weaknesses, you are able to understand what training you might need to fortify the areas that you're weak in. Second, the people that you need to bring to the table to work with you to strengthen your weak areas. Third, it helps you be strategic in what you pursue, making sure that you're taking a strength-based approach and leveraging your strengths. So make sure that you take the time to do a SWOT analysis. As a professional, as a professional woman or man, it is very important to understand what opportunities are available to you and the cost of those opportunities. So not all opportunities are created equal. That's another takeaway point. You have to understand, in order for me to participate in a particular opportunity, what do I have to give up? How much is it going to cost me? What else do I need to consider in order to fully engage with an opportunity? And of course, understanding the threats to your success. This could be time, this could be environment. For example, if you want to pursue a particular trajectory of research, however, the institution that you're at does not provide the right mentorship for that type of career trajectory move, then that would be a threat to your success. And understanding how to leverage the opportunities and the threats to ensure success is very important. The next thing that you want to look at is to determine your platforms. So we're living in a global world right now, and pretty much everyone is interconnected. Thank you to social media, right? And other ways of engaging. As a growing professional, I learned this several years ago when I was in the PhD program. It is not enough for your work to be only known by other professionals in your field. You have to diversify your portfolio of influence and hence choose your mediums for engaging with your community based on what you're hoping to achieve. So for example, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, we have Twitter, Facebook. You have to ask yourself what platform best suits your personality, what platform best suits the message that you're trying to construct, and what platform best suits the community you're trying to influence and impact. So choosing your social media platforms or other platforms is just as important. So for example, do you want to be a YouTuber? Do you have enough information to be sharing with people on YouTube? If you're going to have a YouTube channel, what are you going to be putting on there? So those are the types of questions that you need to ask yourself. And then, of course, develop your content. Part of the secret of social media when it comes to professional growth and development is being very intentional with how you develop the content. Remember that part of building your brand is being consistent with the messaging that you're putting out there. If you want to be known as a professional who is a scientist or who's a media mogul or whatever it is that you're pursuing, you have to be consistent in the messaging that you're putting on your media platforms, whatever they may be. So paying attention to what you post is very important, whether it's a YouTube video, a Facebook post, or a LinkedIn post. What's the message you're trying to relate to your community, and who is your target audience? Is it a short message? Is it a long message? It all depends on who your target community is. And then, of course, discover your community. Make sure that you engage with your community. There's so many different ways that you can do this. A lot of us are professional people, so we go to professional conferences. That's one of the best ways that you can connect and discover who your community is. But even through social media, you can track who's reading your posts, who's liking your posts, and those types of things. And being engaged on a regular basis is very, very important. So I always say nowadays that we've moved away from just reading textbooks and knowing names of publishers of textbooks, but now we want to know who's the individual behind the ideas that we're ascribing to. And so being professional these days also comes with that expectation. So first of all, we talked about identifying your niche, and now we've talked about developing your personal brand. And of course, the 5 things that you can do as part of the framework to developing your personal brand. The next thing that you have to do now that you've identified your niche and you've developed a personal brand, the question now becomes, how do you grow your influence and sustain your professional brand? So it's one thing to put yourself out there, but it's another thing to actually sustain your growth and development as a professional. The first thing I tell people when it comes to growing and sustaining your professional brand is to develop a personal strategic plan. A lot of us have heard of organizations having a strategic plan, but seldom do we think about having a personal strategic plan. What this means is you have to treat your brand as an organization. Yes, you are an organization, whether you have staff or you have people that work with you or for you. You have to start treating yourself as a brand that needs a strategy to grow and to be sustained. So the first thing you're going to do is identify pillars. I tell people have at least 3 or 4 pillars in your personal strategic plan. For example, 3 of my pillars, the first one is research. The next one is community engagement. And the third one is professional service and acculturation. So for example, in my research pillar for my strategic plan, that's where I define all my research goals and the different objectives that go with that goal, as well as the individual tasks that allow me to be productive and sustain relevance in my program of research. The next one, for example, community engagement. I have a very intentional requirement to participate in organizations and in the community and to volunteer for causes that I'm passionate about. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things that I'm passionate about that I can volunteer that don't directly affect me, but can help improve my branding? So you have to think of community engagement as well as part of your professional branding. So for example, I do the American Heart Association walk. I've done mentoring with undergraduate students and graduate students. I've done things like Read to Win, where we partner with local schools to improve reading literacy in African-American neighborhoods. So you have to ask yourself, what other things can I contribute to society? And hopefully through that engagement, I can extend my influence into all those arenas and also develop the professional networks that I need to further enlarge my professional reach. And again, I talked about professional service and engagement. This is very important to me. As a professional woman, I belong to several professional organizations, but I just don't want to give them my membership dues, right? So my involvement with those professional organizations have to also be instrumental in helping me grow as a professional. So I will run for a board of directors seat, for example, or I'll say I'll be a volunteer on a committee. I'll do several different things with the professional organizations that I work with. The goal is not just to pay your membership dues. The goal is for you to be an active member of an organization. The next thing after you develop your personal strategic plan is to develop a training plan. Believe me, we all don't know everything. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. You have to be intentional about what training you're going to need in order for you to move into the roles that you hope to get into, whether you're looking at leadership roles, community engagement roles, whatever it is, you have to be intentional about making sure that you're receiving adequate training. So just because you have a PhD or a master's or your bachelor's is not enough for you to grow into the spaces that you need to grow into. So if there's a certificate program that you have to take, go ahead and take that. If there's a fellowship program you have to participate in the fellowship program. All those things enhance your experiences and make your work relevant beyond the 4 walls of your institution. And also that's how you begin to develop a professional identity. Because with each layer of engagement, you're broadening your network, you're broadening your influence, and more people are learning about you, your work, and the impact that your work is having in your community. The next thing is build a diverse team. You are not going to be successful as a solo person running every show in your kingdom. Okay, so you have to build a team. So we go back to the issue of your SWOT analysis, right? One of the things I mentioned was weaknesses. I often tell people that you build your team based on the areas that you need the most support. So if you're good at organizing, maybe you don't need someone on your staff just for organizing. Maybe you need somebody who's good at marketing because maybe that's not what you're good at. So being strategic in how you hire people or how you bring people to your team is very important. Also, bring people to your team who have diversity of thought. And this is so important because you don't want people who just are agreeing with you. You want people who challenge you. You want people who think outside the box. You want people who will open your mind up to other worldviews. So being open to bringing people who are different from you and ascribe to different values or even have different perspectives about the world is very important. And of course, the fourth thing I tell people is practice conscientious offloading. So conscientious offloading is actually a term that I came up with when I was writing my book. And I'll talk about my book in just a little bit. But a lot of us as professional women and professional people in general have so many opportunities that come our way. And sometimes we feel bombarded. We don't know whether to say yes or no, or what opportunities to say yes to. And sometimes we have this scarcity mentality that we have to say yes to everything at the time that it is presented to us. Conscientious offloading is the notion that before you accept a new opportunity, you need to look at what is currently on your plate and make sure that you have the resources, the skills, and the time to be able to commit to a new opportunity without really losing your mind. So a lot of us suffer from overcommitment, and that is one of the biggest reasons why we're not able to progress professionally. Because if your plate is constantly full, in order for you to bring something else onto your plate, you're either going to overcommit, or you're going to let that opportunity pass you by because you just don't have the capacity to do that. So conscientious offloading is really a formula for you to determine how to strategically say yes or no to opportunities and how to maximize and optimize the opportunities that come your way in order for you to reach the people that you're hoping to reach and to have the influence and the impact that you hope your work to have. Maintaining a networking budget. Often people don't think about this, but networking is expensive, right? Yes, and of course, in this day of, I don't want to say post-COVID because we're still in it, we've mastered, video conferencing and online platforms and all of this stuff. But there's some things that just need to happen in person. That's just an organic energy that comes from meeting someone in person and doing all of those things. So as a growing professional, in order for you to grow your networks, in order for you to have the impact that you hope to have, you always have to have a networking budget. So budget for the networking events that you go to on a yearly basis, but budget for taking somebody else that you want to consult on a project to coffee or tea or dinner. All of those things are things that you have to proactively think about, because opportunities that come for professional development and growth usually require you to put some resources into growing those relationships. So always budget for your networking events. And of course, implement a personal performance improvement plan. I tell people that if you're just waiting for your annual evaluation and for your boss to tell you what you're not doing well, you're doing all of this really poorly. And if you're trying to grow and rise in organizational leadership and your work to have the impact that it needs to have, you don't need anybody to tell you what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right. You need to have a personal improvement plan, performance improvement plan. So this goes back to having a strategic plan. If you have a strategic plan, you have benchmarks that you need to reach. So for example, for my own personal growth, I say I have to publish at least 4 to 5 manuscripts in peer-reviewed scientific journals every year. So when I'm getting to October and I'm like, oh, I'm at 3 papers. What did I not do right this year that I'm at 3 papers? It could be things that are outside of my control. But if I don't take the time to actually evaluate my own performance, then I don't know where I'm falling short. I don't know where my strategic plan objectives are not being met. And I'm just waiting for somebody else to tell me that I'm not meeting the benchmark. So be your, I don't want to call it worst critic, but be your best critic and give yourself the feedback that you need in order to improve as a professional. And of course, we all want to know, how can my work have impact? So here on this slide, we talk about some important aspects of professional development that leads to career impact. First and foremost, I always say, and I think all of you know this, you have to have mentors. Nobody will make the kind of impact that they want to make in this world without mentors. You need people who've been where you're trying to go. You need people who are well connected and are able to support your vision. These are people that I call vision carriers. Everyone needs a vision carrier in their world. And you don't have to restrict yourself to one mentor. You can have mentors for different aspects of your life. You can have a personal mentor for your personal life. You can have within the career realm, you can have different types of mentors. So for example, I have a mentor for research. I have a mentor for leadership. I even have a mentor for just my personal life, because sometimes I tend to be a workaholic. So I need someone to tell me, oh, you're working too hard. You need to slow down. So you need several different types of people in your life to help you. I like Judy Robinette's book on power connectors. Always identify a mentor that is considered a power connector. These are people who have strong networks, strong, large networks, and have influence in different arenas. Identify one of those people and ask them to be your mentor. Learn from them. Let them connect you with people, opportunities, and let them also guide you on what to do and what not to do. The secret to mentoring is being open to feedback. And when you don't agree with your mentor, having the respect to respectfully disagree and allowing your mentor to understand your point of view. If you're in a good mentoring relationship, your mentor is not going to try to make a clone of themselves, but rather they're trying to help you develop and grow for you to realize your highest potential and not really be their mini version of themselves. The next thing I say is consultation. Be open to hearing what other people have to say about a particular subject. Don't always think that you have the best ideas, because really you don't. So being open to asking people to give you feedback, being open to asking for suggestions, that is how you're going to grow, because you don't know everything. And that's why other people are gifted in other areas. Learning is always important because learning never stops. With every new position that you get, you have new learning to do. So like I said, I started out as an assistant professor. I was trying to learn the ropes of being an assistant professor. By the time I was being comfortable, I was promoted to associate professor. And now I had to learn the new ropes of being associate professor. What does that mean for me to be associate professor? And before I knew it, I'm now in this director role. And now I have to learn, what does it mean to be a director? So you always are learning, and you have to be open to learning. There's always something new to learn in every position that you take. If you are taking positions thinking you know everything there is to know, that is the best formula for not being successful in that role. Taking time for personal reflection is very important. Most of us don't take the time to think about, what am I doing right? what am I doing wrong? How can I improve? How can I improve my craft? How can I be more understanding to my staff? How can I be more encouraging to my staff? What can I do to be a better version of myself? And reflection really allows us the time to do that. Study your work and learn how to improve on it as well. And of course, they say that success comes from what we do consistently. So practice, practice, practice. Whatever it is you're doing, be consistent about it. I remember, people tell me, Mercy, you've been so successful with grant writing. And I often have to remind people that really, if I think about it, when I first started, the first 7 grants that I wrote, well, the first 6 grants that I wrote were not funded. And I could have said, oh, I'm such a poor grant writer, so I'm never going to do this ever again. But today I can say that I've had such great opportunities to receive grant funding. And in fact, I was telling my husband the other day, I said, there's always room for improvement, because this last grant that I wrote, I was actually very proud of myself, if I should say that. Our grant scored the highest and was in the top 1%. And this is a federal grant of all the grants that were reviewed in that study section. So imagine going from failure upon failure upon failure to being in the top 1% of the grants that were submitted to a federal funding agency. That to me shows progression of improvement. So always know that there's always room for improvement in whatever you're doing. And even with the successful funding that I've had, having been ranked in the top 1% was like, oh my God, there's always room for improvement. So always look for opportunities for improvement and how to improve your craft, how to improve your skills. And that goes back to that personal branding, because that's how you create your own niche. And that's how you create your own branding, is by successfully and consistently doing the same thing and becoming an expert at it. So with that being said, I cannot share all my secrets on how to rise in organizational leadership and for your work to have the impact that it needs to have in a 30-minute presentation. But I have good news for you. I have a new book that's coming out in May, actually, just about 2 months from now. And although it's written with a nursing focus, I will say that this book really has strategies and ideas that can help anybody who's trying to grow professionally and is trying to really transition into a new role. What are some of the things that you need to think about? And so the title of the book is A Nurse's Step-by-Step Guide to Transitioning in an Academic Role. First-year strategies to jumpstart your career in education and research. So be on the lookout. I will give you all the ways that you can actually reach me once the book is out. And if you have any questions, please connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Here are my websites. One of them is my personal website. The other one is my professional website, and you can learn more about my work. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope that you've learned something from this presentation. And I can assure you that there are several challenges that we as migrant women face when we're trying to grow as professionals and we're trying to climb the proverbial career ladder. However, it is doable, and there are a lot of resources that are available to you in order to have a very successful career. So reach out to me. I would love to connect and learn more about your work and learn about what you're doing as well. And again, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you.